Welcome to the Surviving to Thriving podcast, where we're dedicated to helping you break free from chronic inflammation and get your life back. I'm Dr. Rachel Yeager, naturopathic doctor and medical intuitive, and the founder of the Surviving to Thriving method of chronic illness recovery. Join me as we uncover strategies for overcoming health challenges and restoring your physical, mental, emotional, and soul health. Together, let's embark on a journey to thriving. Welcome, everyone. We're going to cover Hashimoto's today, which is honestly one of my most favorite conditions to treat because it shifts so well with a holistic approach. And plenty of people get total lifelong remission of Hashimoto's when the root causes are actually treated. Because with Hashimoto's, in my opinion, it is one of the easiest conditions to treat the root causes from my perspective, as someone who looks at the root causes and walks through, here's what we can do to address them. The root causes tend to be pretty straightforward if we know what we're actually looking for when it comes to Hashimoto's. So with Hashimoto's, it is an attack on the thyroid. It is an autoimmune attack. The immune system is attacking and poking little holes in the thyroid gland. This is really close to my heart because not only do I know a lot of people with Hashimoto's and just have seen firsthand the exhaustion that can impact people, but I've also experienced it firsthand. During COVID times, I got positive thyroid peroxidase antibodies, which are the Hashimoto's antibodies, for the first time in my life. And I had a positive thyroid ultrasound that confirmed I was having thyroiditis, inflammation in my thyroid, and I actually had hyperthyroidism. It was the most uncomfortable feeling. I felt constantly amped up, wound up, super sweaty, couldn't sleep, super hot. I felt like I was on the verge of a panic attack 24/7. It turned out that my inflamed thyroid that was under immune attack was leaking thyroid hormone. Basically, my immune system was poking little holes in it from the attack that was going on. So this thyroid hormone was leaking out. And so I had high thyroid in my system, which is actually pretty common at the very beginning of Hashimoto's. It's not until later when the thyroid has started to really be damaged or this has been more chronic that we see the hypothyroidism that's more commonly associated with Hashimoto's. A lot of people are misdiagnosed or not diagnosed because doctors are only screening TSH. We've had literature for 10 plus years now showing that screening TSH as a way to check your thyroid is not an adequate marker of thyroid function. We have to be checking free T4 and free T3, which are our active, actual thyroid hormones. TSH is just your brain signal to your thyroid. We can have imbalances in how much thyroid hormone our thyroid gland is producing, and that's not even being checked. We can have that happen before our brain feels the need to start screaming at our thyroid and have a high TSH. It's a little bit confusing in the thyroid land. High TSH means low thyroid function, hypothyroid. Low TSH is more commonly associated with hyperthyroid. And plenty of people who are getting their thyroid screened are not stopping biotin, B vitamins, in their hair, nails, maybe snuck in with their supplements, their collagen, it's in multivitamins. They're not stopping those for 5 days before their labs so that they can get an accurate thyroid read because biotin does interact and interfere with accurate thyroid blood lab results. I think that's one of the reasons people are being misdiagnosed or undiagnosed. Another reason is, for some reason, whenever someone is seeing their PCP or their endocrinologist or whoever is running the thyroid labs, usually it takes a really abnormal TSH level to trigger someone to do the follow-up labs to look at the actual thyroid hormone. And then when that actual thyroid hormone is low, people are told you have hypothyroidism. For some reason, people are not checking and seeing, is this autoimmune or not? Because that is huge. We need to know the root cause. Hypothyroidism is a symptom of something that's wrong upstream. But what is causing it? What's going on underneath? Is this an autoimmune attack, or is this low thyroid from other causes like toxicity or stress, things like that? So with Hashimoto's, It is an autoimmune attack on the thyroid that eventually causes hypothyroidism. The earlier we catch it, the better. I'm always a fan of screening people for this if their thyroid is off at all, or even if thyroid numbers are totally normal. If someone is having symptoms that are possibly autoimmune or having a lot of inflammation symptoms like fatigue, brain fog, body pain, mood changes, sleep issues, I'm screening TPO antibodies, thyroid peroxidase antibodies, because those can show up and your thyroid can compensate for so long. And then eventually, after those antibodies have been present for a while, then we start seeing the abnormal thyroid results. So why wait until something is a problem to be able to go after it? So if there's any reason to check that, I'm checking it right away. So we're going to cover symptoms, root causes, testing, treatment, diet, how to move from surviving to thriving if you do have Hashimoto's. So let's start here with a little bit deeper dive into what Hashimoto's is. Hashimoto's is the most common cause of hypothyroidism in the US, and it's often missed because the early symptoms mimic everyday stress or burnout. Hashimoto's is probably the most common coexisting autoimmune condition with other autoimmune conditions. So if you already have an autoimmune condition such as Crohn's or rheumatoid arthritis, and you're not being screened, in my book, ideally yearly, for this kind of autoimmune thyroid reaction, then I would add that to your goal list for your health. Signs and symptoms of Hashimoto's. We've got fatigue. We've got weight gain, cold intolerance. You feel cold all the time, and the cold outside is unbearable. Brain fog. Constipation is a huge one. Dry skin, thinning hair, usually depression, sometimes anxiety. Menstrual irregularities, because our thyroid interplays a lot with sex hormones. And then we can also have flare-ups. This would be sudden big fatigue or mood changes, swelling in the neck. We can have hoarseness or feels like your vocal cords are just full in your neck. Joint pain, another one that can happen with Hashimoto's. Symptoms can ebb and flow. It can make it confusing for people to identify what's going on. They think, oh, I must just be like fighting off a flu and it must be happening randomly all the time, even though I'm not having a fever. And there is a difference between early symptoms versus advanced. So if we're early Hashimoto's, we may very well be swinging between hyper and hypo, because even though our thyroid function is shutting down and we're making less, we also have that immune attack on the thyroid, which is essentially poking holes. It becomes like a colander instead of a bowl. And so we have extra thyroid hormone escaping into the bloodstream. So people can have hyperthyroid symptoms as well and oscillate back and forth. Hyperthyroid is going to be the opposite of hypo, but the skin, hair, nails changes, those are all the same for both. With hyper, excess thyroid, we're hot, sweaty, we have heat intolerance, we might be losing weight, we might feel amped up and wired, and just like we're constantly in fight or flight, even if we feel like our body should be relaxed. It can be really hard to focus. We can have diarrhea or really loose stool, and sometimes we can't wind down. Sleep is really hard. In later advanced Hashimoto's, we're pretty much just looking at hypothyroid. Everything's getting slower, metabolism is getting more sluggish. The thyroid is stopping being able to actually keep up and make its own thyroid hormone. If we catch Hashimoto's later in the game like this, ultimately, oftentimes we're not able to help the thyroid make all of its own thyroid hormone. And we do rely on doing some bioidentical thyroid replacement, which we'll talk about. So this is my favorite part, is the root causes. I wish everyone understood that there is a root cause of your autoimmune condition, and it is a toxin. It is some kind of biotoxin that your body is responding to. There's so much research on this. We know this without a doubt that this is what's happening. So what is the fire that's being lit inside the body, the chronic inflammation? It's not just that you have low thyroid hormone. That is an effect. We're wondering, what is the actual cause that is causing you to have low thyroid hormone? So some of the most common ones are chronic infections, most notably Epstein-Barr virus, Lyme, H. pylori has also been implicated. In my case, I can say COVID was a cause for me. mold exposure and environmental toxins. These can trigger pretty much any autoimmune conditions, and Hashimoto's is one of the more common first autoimmune conditions to show up. Food sensitivities, so especially gluten and sometimes dairy. We see cross reactions with these foods and a handful of other foods with tissues in the body. It's not just about, oh, I want to avoid gluten to eat healthier. No, this is an autoimmune response. It's not celiac. It's a different autoimmune response than what's going on with celiac, but still can be an autoimmune response to gluten. And the gluten has molecular mimicry, which means it looks similar in the eyes of your immune system warrior attack cells. It looks similar to proteins in your own body. Same thing with infections. They're putting out proteins that look similar to your thyroid tissue in the eyes of your immune system. So your immune system is manufacturing on an assembly line all of these proteins that are basically being made as little weapons to kill whatever fits their criteria. And they're being given a template, a slate, a picture, like a mugshot. This is who we're going for. And that template overlaps. It looks like different tissues in the body. And so what happens is different infections and different triggers can actually look like different proteins in our body. And so we end up getting an autoimmune attack on different proteins based on which infections are present that our body is making these templates that they're feeding to our warrior cells to go try to kill these things. So whenever we're thinking about autoimmunity, we're wondering, are there infections? Are there foods that are coming into the body that the body is seeing as a foreign invader, a threat to attack? And in doing so, it is accidentally prompting an attack on some of your own tissues as well. And also, when we think of mold exposure, we don't just think of the response of the immune system trying to attack and get rid of this mold, which is a foreign invader. We think of how mold is a huge immunosuppressant. And so any little start of an infection that your body had been able to suppress for years is able to take off if you have mold exposure, because you can no longer keep that Epstein-Barr virus from that mono that you had back in high school or college. You can't keep that H. pylori that first flared when you were on a vacation back 10 years ago. You can't keep that stuff under control anymore. And so it becomes a problem, and then we have an autoimmune response to it. Stress is also a trigger and a perpetrator of immune dysfunction. A big part of that is that stress turns on genes that make our body more likely to attack things. Stress also can do the same thing that mold can, where it suppresses our immune system. So again, these things that were just hanging out, they were kind of part of our normal flora, and they weren't a big deal, and now they suddenly are. And they're able to become full-blown infections, which our body then has to mount a response to. And then we get that molecular mimicry, that confusion with our own tissues that happens as a result of trying to kill those things. We can have genetic predisposition. 20 to 25% of the population has some form of HLA variation, which means that 20 to 25% of the population has an immune variation where we don't fight off infections or foreign invaders as well as the average person. So this might be just mold for some people. It might be just certain infections for some people. Other people actually have a broad spectrum and ability to fight stuff off. That's a smaller handful of that 20 to 25%, where the immune system is really multi-susceptible and is not able to adequately distinguish threats. And therefore, it has to rely on creating a huge inflammatory response to try to kill something because its warrior antibody cells don't work very well. Whole other podcast about that, but I think those people should be screened because what we let into our bodies needs to be different for people based on what your genetics are predisposing your immune system to have in terms of a response. Environmental exposure. So again, we've heard this a million times, but genetics loads the gun, environment pulls the trigger. So we can have these genetics, we can carry the gene that makes us more prone to developing Crohn's disease or whatever specific autoimmune condition it may be. We haven't identified genes for all of them yet, and we're far from identifying all the genes that play into these autoimmune conditions. It doesn't mean that these genes are active. Our body can zipper closed these genes and unzip them and open them up. And they're being expressed in multiple cells and multiple places in our body. So, based on our levels of inflammation, our body can be zipping closed and sealing tight these genes that we don't want expressed. Or if we're having a lot of inflammation coming into the body, then we're more likely to be unzipping, opening up, and exposing these genes so they can then be copied and become expressed. So that's the idea of epigenetics, that we can actually modify our genome based on our lifestyle and our level of inflammation in the body. So, how to test for Hashimoto's? If your doctor is only running a TSH test, that is not enough. Your doctor is running a total T3 or a total T4, they're getting close, but free T3 and free T4 are the way to go. The new research has shown this for years and years. We know that these are a much better marker and indicator than checking total T3 and total T4. Checking anti-TPO antibodies is also helpful. Anti-thyroglobulin antibodies are other antibodies that can be positive. Typically, only anti-TPO antibodies are checked because if anti-thyroglobulin bodies are positive, most of the time anti-TPO bodies are even more positive. They go hand in hand. So for the most complete screen, we could check both. Insurance is moving away from covering that and just covering the TPO antibodies. Depending on symptoms, reverse T3 can be helpful to be checked. I like to check reverse T3 when I am wondering if someone's stress is really impacting their thyroid. If someone is displaying a lot of signs of stress, you're feeling really jumpy, you can't wind down, you can't go to sleep, you know you have stress from your life or job or whatever it is, it could be good to go ahead and check reverse T3. And if your reverse T3 is above about 15, then we know that most likely stress is impacting your thyroid. Sometimes the stress is not coming from life stress. It can be your body perceiving stress based on things like infections. Symptoms can keep persisting even if your labs are, quote, normal, because even if we're normalizing the thyroid's production of hormone and we're able to help the thyroid compensate, you can still have the underlying root cause present in your body that prompted your body to create this in the first place. And if you have an underlying unaddressed infection or food sensitivity or whatever it may be, you're going to have inflammation, you're going to feel poorly, you're still going to have symptoms because it's actually coming from the inflammation itself, not from your thyroid hormone being out of balance. It's really important too to note that functional versus conventional ranges are very different when it comes to looking at this thyroid panel. A functional range for TSH, we want it to be between 1 and 2. If it's above 3, then we're definitely checking antibodies because that TSH is too high. We want our free T4 to be around 1.4. We want our free T3 to be around 3.4. So that would be a functional range. You'll find that conventional ranges give a lot of leeway. I find that most conventional ranges are way too generous with this. They let TSH be normal all the way up to 5. I don't think someone can have a TSH of 5 and be having a normal functioning thyroid, or at least not a normal full thyroid pathway, because TSH is looking at your brain signal down to your thyroid. So what can we do in terms of diet and lifestyle as daily medicine? With Hashimoto's disease, it can be really helpful to reduce inflammation, support the gut, and calm the immune system. Some people choose to do an AIP, autoimmune paleo diet, or do some kind of elimination diet to help figure out the food sensitivity part. It's really common to go ahead and remove trigger foods like gluten and dairy. The caveat with that is I personally like to test these with people before we would cut them out, because once you've cut out that food, you won't be able to get an accurate test to know if you are mounting an antibody response to it. Doesn't sound like a big deal if you're like, I'm going to cut it out anyway, but you would be surprised how much it comes up where you're at a birthday party or it's your own birthday or you're out at dinner and you're trying to figure out exactly how careful you need to be. And you wish you could know, is it really going to be a big deal if you have one bite of this food that you did not specify whether it had dairy or gluten or not? You won't know that if you don't check your antibody levels and see if you're having an immune response, can be different than what you can feel and perceive in terms of changing symptoms when you do just an elimination diet. Supportive foods for the thyroid are huge. So, selenium and iodine are absolutely necessary for the thyroid to be able to make hormone. Selenium can be found in Brazil nuts. Just 2 Brazil nuts a day actually provides the selenium that we need. And iodine, super helpful. Recommended to get a decent amount of that a day. That can vary per person. Iodine is found in shellfish and sometimes in seaweed. I usually recommend that people take a balanced mineral complex that has a good ratio of these in them and has all the other trace minerals. These ones we know the thyroid especially needs, but truly there's other trace minerals that really support our thyroid as well. And we need them anyway for the rest of our body to function and to help lower inflammation. Anti-inflammatory fats are really helpful. So avoiding processed industrial seed oils. So if the label says sunflower oil or canola oil, that's an oxidized, rancid, inflammatory fat. If it says organic or cold pressed in front of those, then it's going to be that cold expeller pressed. It is not rancid. It's actually anti-inflammatory to the body. And I just want to emphasize the power of a personalized approach. This is why I don't think that any huge one size fits all things are ever going to be super successful because we're all individuals and we need to be taking into account what's different for each of us as individuals. So, doing a personalized custom approach, I mean, what's triggering your Hashimoto's could be very different than what's triggering your friend's Hashimoto's, even if you have the exact same lab and symptom presentation. So, let's talk about treatment options. We've got some conventional options like levothyroxine or Synthroid. This is a synthetic made but bioidentical thyroid hormone replacement for T4. T4 is usually the safest and easiest to replace. If someone is planning to become pregnant or is already pregnant, we usually stick with T4. It's predictable, we know it's really safe, and we can adjust the dose readily. T3, leothyronine, is an option as well. We have to be a little bit more careful because this is such an active, potent form of thyroid hormone. I see a lot of people who start on this end up accidentally pushing their thyroid too much, and they end up having hyperthyroid symptoms like racing heart, feeling sweaty, having trouble sleeping, and faster moving bowels. So we really have to keep an eye. That being said, some people do not convert well from the T4 form of thyroid to the T3. And so even if we give those conversion aids like the selenium and the iodine, some people do still need to be taking that small amount of T3. We watch how much T3 we would give in pregnancy, but otherwise, plenty of people do great adding in T3. There are combo supports. You can take a separate amount of T3 or T4. I believe there's one prescription combo. It's a preset ratio available. And then there's always compounding options where you could have it compounded at a special pharmacy that makes doses that are different than what's conventionally available at a pharmacy like CVS. And then we have natural desiccated thyroid options. These are usually sourced from porcine or pig thyroid. These can be really helpful. I'm not a huge fan of these, even though I love all things natural, because there's an unpredictable amount of thyroid hormone in them. And so, depending on the dose that someone is taking of these, we actually need to switch them off if a woman were to want to become pregnant because the T3 could be too high. We can't know what the exact dose is in each of these. And a lot of the people I work with are more sensitive, and we want to have precise doses and be able to really keep things calibrated and keep a handle on things. That's hard to do with Armour and NP thyroid. That being said, everyone's different. We don't do one size fits all because we're all different. So for some people, they do great with Armor and NP Thyroid and they feel better on it than if they were to do the synthetic Levo and Leo combo, the T4, T3 combo that's found naturally from pig gland in the Armor and NP Thyroid. Plenty of endocrinologists refuse to prescribe Armor and NP Thyroid, so it's a little bit harder to get. The trick is to just have someone who knows what they're doing. You need someone who is a functional thyroid prescriber, who knows how to be actually monitoring your labs and adjusting things, who understands all the body impacts like your hormones and other things that are going to be affecting your thyroid levels. A couple other notable supplements that can help support thyroid and immune health. So we talked about the selenium and iodine. Adaptogens. Adaptogens like ashwagandha and holy basil. We have to be careful about these because for some people, they can have the opposite effect on their thyroid. For other people, these are amazing and they're night and day. And they really help support the thyroid and tone the thyroid and let the thyroid do its job better. Having a healthy balance system in general is huge. Our thyroid is one of our first line of organs that is typically affected when there's long-term inflammation in the body. It's a little bit more fragile. And so if we're low vitamin D, if we're low B12, if we have inflammation coming in from what we're eating or what we're doing, our thyroid is susceptible. So looking at the whole picture is really important when it comes to balancing the thyroid. Treating the root cause is always going to be a part of a successful, holistic style Hashimoto's approach that's actually treating the root cause. Looking at different food reactions, looking at gut healing, mold detox, antivirals if needed, or specific things to target the specific infections that might ping back as positive so that we can go after those and help stop that immune response to the thyroid. We always need to reduce the toxic burden on the body. So not only are we trying to help remove any barriers to healing, like the infections or other root causes that are triggering it in the first place, we're trying to bring in supportive and nourishing things. We need to be having that anti-inflammatory diet support. We need enough sleep. We need stress support. We need to be balancing our neurotransmitters and helping support our brain chemicals. So we even have the focus and motivation and drive to make these healthy supportive changes in the first place. We can regularly test and monitor our antibodies and our thyroid levels. And things should evolve over time. You might start with a really strict diet and then not need to do a strict diet later. You might be taking a lot of supplements in the beginning and then you're not going to need that much in the future. The overall take here is if you have Hashimoto's, you are not broken. There is a way forward and a holistic path works extremely well for Hashimoto's because it's usually a combination of environmental triggers and high inflammation in the body. And those are things that a holistic approach works way better for than a conventional approach. Our conventional aids come in if we're wanting to do thyroid replacement with levothyroxine or using T3 replacement and being able to balance those, monitor with labs. I like to blend the best of both worlds. Let's use all the natural supports and then let's incorporate and pick and choose the good conventional med supports and options and testing that we want to incorporate. So we're having a whole picture and we're doing this in the way that's going to be the best benefit for you. If you're having a new onset of fatigue or you're feeling like you just can't get out of bed in the morning, if you're gaining weight, if you notice that your hair, skin, or nails are having changes, if you're feeling like your mood is lower, those are all really key signs to go get your thyroid tested. And don't just get your TSH tested. You need to check these other markers and make sure that your thyroid is truly doing okay. If you want support with this, always reach out. This is an area that I love supporting people with because your thyroid affects all of your body. If we can help your thyroid work better, we're turning back on your metabolism. It's going to support your mood. You're going to be able to get up easier in the morning. You're going to feel better overall. It's going to be an easier time in the bathroom. Your hair, skin, and nails are going to improve. It's really something that affects our entire whole body systemic health. So feel free to follow along. This is something I'm going to keep talking about a lot, and I will see you all next time. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Surviving to Thriving podcast. I hope you found inspiration and valuable insights to support your journey towards better health and happiness. Remember, each health journey is unique. This podcast is not medical advice, and it's essential to consult with your healthcare provider before making any changes. If you'd like to schedule a complimentary consultation with me, I would love to talk with you. Please go to drrachelyager.com/schedule.